Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something super specific, but honestly, fascinating. We're unpacking the psychological profile of the solitary fixer. You know exactly the guy I'm talking about. And hey, if you don't, there's a pretty good chance you actually are him. We're going to explore the real psychology behind why this extreme technical competence is almost always paired with this deep, unshakable preference for being totally alone. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start by picturing a scenario I think we can all kind of relate to. It's 3 hours before a massive deadline, and boom, your laptop just completely dies. Now, most of us, we are instantly spiraling into total panic mode. But this guy? No reaction. None. He doesn't complain. He doesn't sigh. He just stares at that dark screen for a second with this quiet, intense focus, like a doctor looking at an X-ray. And then, with literally zero drama, he gets quiet and just gets to work. And you're just standing there feeling completely useless, wondering why your nervous system screamed panic while his immediately shifted right into diagnostic mode.
But then, you gotta look at the other side of him, because we have to contrast that brilliant technical skill with his social habits. Habits that, frankly, totally baffle his friends and family. He's the guy who always leaves the party early. He is definitely not replying in the group chat. He's maybe got, 2 people he'd actually consider genuine friends? People usually say he's hard to get close to. But the funny thing is, he isn't actively unfriendly. He's just elsewhere. And usually, elsewhere means he's on the garage floor with a flashlight and a socket wrench at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night.
So, the big question we really need to ask here is this. What exactly links the man who can flawlessly diagnose a circuit board with the man who absolutely will not answer his phone on a weekend? Like, what does being good with tools have to do with wanting to be alone? A lot of people just write this off as a personality quirk, oh, he's just an introvert or he's antisocial. But I promise you, this isn't just antisocial behavior. It is a complex, finely tuned psychological operating system.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the science of solitude, decoding the mind.
You see, the kind of absolute laser focus required to fix things at a high level, it doesn't just switch off the second he walks out of the garage. It's always running in the background. And this brings us to a concept from the late 1970s by Albert Bandura. It's called self-efficacy. Now, if we strip away all the heavy academic jargon, self-efficacy is simply your deep, specific belief that you are fully capable of handling whatever hard problem gets thrown your way. This isn't just some vague, I hope things work out optimism. It's a profound belief built entirely on past hard-won successes. It's that gut feeling of, look, I've done hard things before, this new thing is hard, I'll figure it out. People with high self-efficacy don't catastrophize. They just put their heads down and work. And that deep belief in their own capability fuels our next psychological pillar. This is Julian Rotter's theory of the internal locus of control. Basically, it shows how these fixers fundamentally believe that their own actions dictate their outcomes. Not luck, not the universe, and definitely not other people. Men with this specific profile score off the charts in this metric. They absolutely loathe waiting around to be rescued. They're never going to look around the room for someone to tell them what to do because they believe in their bones that the outcome depends 100% on what they choose to do next.
But, there's always a cost to being wired this way. And we really need to empathize with their solitude for a second. For a mind that is perfectly calibrated to be entirely self-reliant, asking for help, it actually feels genuinely wrong. Not just a little uncomfortable, but wrong. It feels like a structural error in their own internal software. They often end up alone, not because they hate people, but because needing people too much starts to feel like a dangerous vulnerability. A vulnerability they just feel they literally cannot afford.
Moving right along to Section 2, Origins in Childhood, the 1984 Blueprint.
So let's time travel for a minute and walk through what this powerful solitary mastery actually looks like. Picture this. You're 9 years old, something is broken. Maybe it's a lawnmower, maybe a gate hinge. Nobody's there to teach you. Nobody's walking you through it step by step. You just sit there with the broken thing. You try something, it fails, you try again. And then finally, the engine turns over or the gate swings perfectly shut. You figured it out entirely on your own. And here's the absolutely crucial part. No one claps. You just wipe your hands and put the wrench away in total silence. But in that silent moment, your nervous system logs the ultimate proof. I don't need anyone to solve the hard things.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how entirely different environments can create this exact same profile. There are usually 2 main pathways. Sometimes it was a dad who was actually present, but just looked at the kid and said, figure it out, because he trusted the child enough to let them struggle and learn. But other times,
It was a dad who just wasn't there at all, forcing that kid to become their own resource out of pure necessity. Two completely different pathways, but they both create the exact same self-reliant man standing alone in his garage.
Let's jump to Section 3, Strength versus Survival, 2 types of fixers.
To really understand this whole dynamic, we've got to acknowledge a huge caveat. Not every man who isolates himself to fix things is operating from a place of healthy, empowered strength. On one hand, we have the survival strategy. This is the guy who learned super early on that he was only valued if he was useful. For him, fixing is entirely driven by anxiety. His nervous system basically decided long ago, I will never, ever be helpless again. But on the flip side, we have genuine fascination. This is the guy who fixes things simply out of pure curiosity. For him, the gap between broken and working is literally the most interesting place in the world. He isn't hiding from anyone, he's just deeply engaged in something he finds incredibly cool.
But let's pause and focus on that anxious fixer for a second. Because this thought right here perfectly captures his reality. His avoidant solitude is essentially a survival strategy that's masquerading as a superpower. If you tell him, hey, just let a plumber handle the broken pipe, he literally can't do it. He hovers, he stresses out. He isn't out in the barrage because he just loves peace and quiet. He's out there alone because an unfixed problem in his environment feels like a terrifying unfixed problem inside of himself. Asking for help requires a kind of vulnerability and helplessness that he just flat out does not know how to perform.
All right, Section 4, the cost of competence, the invisible man.
There is a really heavy price to pay for being the guy who can handle absolutely everything. By becoming the single most capable person in the room, he actually simultaneously makes himself the most invisible. Think about it. He is deeply, vividly present during a crisis. Hand him a real tangible problem and he's more alive than you've seen him all week. But he's deeply absent when everything is fine. Small talk? It's basically a foreign language to a brain that craves real problems to solve. He seems to need almost nothing from other people. Yet tragically, he's often quietly devastated when nobody even notices his silent contributions. You see, his profound self-sufficiency was partly built to protect himself from the disappointment of wanting more from the people around him.
And this leads us to the ultimate kind of tragic loss of this operating system. Somewhere along the way, years of this solitary practice turned the concept of not knowing into a total liability. He trained himself to sit quietly with his confusion until he figured it out. And because of that, the simple ability to just say, I have no idea, I need help, completely disappeared. He didn't actively choose to lose that skill, he just practiced the exact opposite thing for so long that the original muscle completely atrophied.
Finally, Section 5, the load-bearing wall, redefining coldness.
It is time we fundamentally flip the script on how we view this intense focus and silence. It is not indifference, not at all. It's actually a super rare, unspoken language of loyalty. Every single time he shows up without being asked, every time he fixes something before you even realized it was broken, and every time he works through some frustrating problem all alone at midnight so nobody else has to deal with it, he's demonstrating an unbelievable tolerance for difficulty. Most people completely misread this intense, focused attention as him being distant or cold, but the truth is, it's a profound act of service.
Let's bring this explainer home with a really powerful metaphor. A man like this is exactly like a load-bearing wall in a house. You walk past it every single day, it's not decorative, it doesn't draw attention to itself like the walls covered in fancy art. But if you take that load-bearing wall away, the entire structure shifts and completely collapses. He quietly and consistently holds everything together, entirely away from the noise in his own particular silence.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought as we wrap up our explainer today. Who are the invisible load-bearing walls in your own life? And even more importantly, what is the true hidden cost of their quiet competence? If you recognize someone in your life from this explainer today, or hey, if you recognized yourself, take a moment to finally appreciate the incredible weight that's being carried in that silence. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.